Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko Heather Lamond taku ingoa. Ko au te tumuaki o te rauheringa o Aotearoa. No Fielding ki Manawatu ahau. Kei te mihi atu ki ngā tumuaki o mua. Kei te mihi hoki ki a koutou katoa o koutou mātauranga. Kia ora. Good morning, everyone. For those that do not know me already, I am Heather Lamond and I am the president of LIANZA, and I come from Fielding here in the Manawatu. And I'm a librarian. In my mihi, I acknowledge the wisdom of previous LIANZA presidents, some of you are here today, but also the combined wisdom and strength of everyone in this room. I pokaria, to celebrate, sustain and transform. What a wonderful concept for describing a conference, and I can feel the excitement and anticipation around me this morning and yesterday as we all look forward to the coming days of learning, listening, talking and thinking. The value of this space, whether that is a physical or a mental space away from our day-to-day lives, where we get to consider our profession in the widest sense, but also to gather practical ideas that we can take home with us. The value of that to me is huge. And I think it interesting that even in this digital age, when we can do so much virtually, we still see the value in coming together physically. It is so important for us to take some time, not only to learn and to consider new information, but also to look back and reflect on everything that we've achieved. On a personal level, it is this reflection and indeed celebration that provides us all with the drive and energy to carry on with the challenges ahead of us. Now, I believe that we as a profession need to get way better at celebrating what we do too, and not to celebrate in that quiet librarian pat on the back way at our own conference, but to celebrate loudly outside of our bubble so that no one can miss the story of all the good stuff that libraries do. How do we do that? I have great confidence in the LIANZA Brand Libraries working group that at the end of that project we will have some solid strategic plans for building brand awareness for libraries. But I actually think we can all undertake to help with this work every day. So when you go home at night, do you tell your family about a success story you had in your workplace today, a difference you made to somebody's life? Do you do that at sports clubs or at social dues and other non-library activities? I was thinking about, there was a police recruitment campaign a few months back about getting better work stories. But I actually think we have fantastic work stories in the places where we work. We're just not very good at telling them, and we don't tell them often enough. The more we can talk about what we do on a daily basis, the more people will understand why libraries are still relevant in our digital age. And then when we have a lot of advocacy work to do, it's actually easier because we're not starting from a handicapped position of trying to explain what it is that we do. And there is no more important time to do this than now. Recently, there was a private member's bill drawn from the ballot, and for those of you that haven't caught up with this, it's a bill to amend the Local Government Act, and the intent of it is that public library services should be free. So with that bill being drawn from the ballot and due for its first reading very shortly, probably within, we're estimating, 6 to 8 weeks, now is the time to tell everybody what we do and why it is so important that every citizen in New Zealand has access to not only the physical library free of charge, but to all of the services provided by it. And if we can't articulate this clearly and simply, then we're actually a bit stuffed, as nobody else is going to do that for us. We need to formulate our arguments on why these services should be free of charge. If we can pass that message to our users, then they can advocate on our behalf as well. But we need to feed them the reasons and the messages. Here are some ideas. If we allow local government to force libraries to charge for core library services, it hurts the people who need free library services the most. Now I, and probably many of us here, can afford to buy some material that we want to read, whether that's print or digital. I don't know about you, but I cannot afford to buy everything I want to read. There are a lot of New Zealanders who cannot afford to buy anything to read. So what do? They just stop reading. What is the potential impact of that on New Zealand's literacy levels? Where children do not see their parents, aunties, uncles or whānau reading, what role models do they have to read? There are countless case studies where library charges have been put in place and the use of those libraries goes down. We know it impacts how much people read. This is particularly important in our poorest areas, where people cannot afford to send their kids to school with lunch in their school bag or shoes on their feet. They really cannot afford to pay for library use. Not even that small nominal charge that we hear about. It makes a difference. So if we are serious about raising the basic literacy level in New Zealand, then ensuring free public library services is a bit of a no-brainer. But then, as I said, I'm a librarian. I get this stuff. Free internet access in libraries should really be a basic human right by now. With so much of our government information and access to services only available online, and that will increasingly become the case, how is everybody going to have access to all the information they need to be an active, participating citizen in our democracy? Now, we are going to hear all of the arguments about if libraries provide free internet, we'll put small businesses out of business. Actually, we've heard all that before with video stores and bookshops, and it didn't happen. We'll also hear the argument, well, the UK had similar legislation and it hasn't helped them. They just closed their libraries instead. That's true, that has happened. The thing is, we actually don't have a legislative leg to stand on in this country when it comes to fighting against library charges. So what we need to do is actually advocate on two strands. One is that libraries must provide, local government must provide public libraries, and they must be free. And it's all the same arguments for both strands of advocacy. Again, it seems like a no-brainer, and we're all, most of us, librarians. So I'm preaching to the converted here, I hope. What we need to do now is start preaching to everybody else and really get the public and political support to pass this amendment. So when you leave here all inspired and refreshed and rejuvenated, your first job is to go out there and start spreading the message. The target audience for this first phase of the bill is to convince the politicians to pass it at the first reading. There's all sorts of detail that we have to work on, but we work on that at the select committee stage. So we've got to get it past the first reading before we can do that. So make a time to go and see your local MP and tell him why it is so crucial that public library services in New Zealand are free, or her. Use all your networks and contacts to convince them to go and see their local MP. Can you imagine it? A whole flood of people making appointments with the MP to talk about free public libraries. It's time to get some attention on the issue, and it's up to us to do it. It will be hard work, there's no doubt about that, but I think this is really our only shot, actually, to get this and a chance to do something wonderful. So imagine the celebration that we'll have when we make this happen. Sustain has many different definitions, from the obvious of food and fuel for the body, through to keeping our souls and spirits uplifted, but also to keep going or keep up as a continual process. Now, libraries and librarians have been keeping going for a very long time indeed. In fact, I heard at a conference recently that we are the second oldest profession. And again, I'm a librarian, so I did attempt to verify that in a reputable scholarly source, but have been unable to do so. But I'm happy to go with that as a notion. We are probably in the middle of the biggest revolution that libraries have seen since the printing press. Will we keep going through this revolution? You bet we will. The fact is, people still need someone to collate, organise and help them navigate the world's knowledge. So that means that our role actually remains the same. We're still just connecting people with the information and knowledge that they seek in order to create new information and knowledge. And really, who else does this? I've been thinking about it for a while, and I haven't come up with another profession where that is the primary aim. So I actually think we're sweet, we're here to stay. What we need to do, though, is to have a plan for how we make the most of this revolution. Or revelation, I don't know. Fortunately, we actually have one. Now, when you arrived this morning, there was a bookmark on your chair. This is to launch the new Public Libraries of New Zealand, a strategic framework which has been refreshed. And if you haven't read it, and whether you're a public librarian or not, there's stuff in here for all of us. So use the bookmark and go and get yourself a copy. You can download it, or you can, I believe, order a hard copy as well. What's set out in the framework is a plan for us moving forward into the future. And it's based around public libraries, but we're actually all in the same game. We just play from different positions. So there's ideas in here wherever you work in the sector of what is going to happen over the coming years and what we need to aim for. And we need to work together on that. So do go and look at the framework. It's a great piece of work, and I have to say congratulations to APLM and Local Government New Zealand, because it's a really important piece of work. Now, LIANZA also is working on the plan for the future. We're thinking about who is going to lead our profession in the future through our two Strengthening the Profession working parties, Future Skills and Emerging Leaders. Now, Council has heard from our working parties, and the progress is great, and we have fantastic teams of people working hard to deliver in all three, and it's so exciting to be part of that process. Of course, working out future skills is incredibly difficult, as we don't have a crystal ball. So who knows what skills we might need in the future? It will always be our best guess. But working from what we can see now and can predict in the short term, I think our best guess will be pretty fine. It'll be a good start. Long-term planning is something that many of our workplaces undertake regularly. And now that LIANZA has a robust strategic planning process in place that looks out 3 years in general, we think it's time to undertake some long-term planning for the association. And this will inevitably also involve some thinking about long-term planning in the profession. What will our profession look like in 20 or 30 years? I hope to still be working, so whoever's running the conference then, you can ask me back and I'll tell you what I think. I don't have any answers to this, but if you do, I would personally love to hear them if you've got ideas. My contacts are all on the LIANZA website, so do let me know what you think. Something I personally think we need to consider in the long term for the association is how fragmentation impacts on our sustainability. How far can we stretch what is a limited pool of people before it becomes unsustainable? Now, this is not meant to be a provocative or political statement, but it comes from observations of other library associations around the world, and we all struggle with the same issues. So we're not alone in considering the value of critical mass of membership and the strength in numbers, especially when it comes to advocating. There are many ways we could address this, of course, and we're thinking about this over the coming months. LIANZA is 102 years old this year. We had our centenary in Dunedin a couple of years back. I wonder, is it time to think, if we wanted to develop a library association for all of country now, what would it look like? Would we work from the model we have now, or would we do it in some whole other way? So it's an exciting piece of work that's coming up, and I really would encourage you all to engage with that. So maybe we're thinking about transforming ourselves into something else entirely. Change is the new normal, to use a cliche, not just in libraries and information services, but also just in our life. I'm not sure if it's a result of the digital revolution, but it seems that because communication is so instant now, that the pace of change accelerates along with that. We can make decisions and get stuff done so much faster. So change comes at us in what seems a constant stream. And I know that some of us find change daunting and maybe a little scary, especially when it's happening to us rather than us making it happen. I have a role model that I use, and I thought I would just share her story with you when I think about change and I get a little bit worried about change. She's a library assistant, and she's been working in libraries since well before I was born. She still does. She's still a library assistant. She's 72 now. I can't count how many changes she's gone through in process, procedure, employment structure, and of course technology. From starting with the card catalogue, she now hooks people up to the APNK wireless in her library, and she's just transitioned to Kōtui recently, and she's still learning. So I keep her in mind, and maybe you can picture somebody like this as well, that when another change is coming at me and I think, oh, really, is this never going to end? The reality is, it should never end. It is not going to end. And if change did stop, we'd all be really, really bored, I think. A long time ago now, I watched a management training video called Fish. Now, some of you may know it. If you don't, it is based on the world-famous Pike Place fish market. You can Google that, we're librarians, in Seattle. Now, what I got out of that video is, and I use it every day when I wake up and face going to work, it reminds me that I can choose who I'm going to be each and every day, and that means I can choose my attitude, and we're all able to do this. So when change is coming at me thick and fast, I choose my attitude. And the attitude lately has been change, bring it on. To echo Mavis's words from yesterday, in fact, she stole my whakatauki, I would have to say. Whaia te iti kahurangi ki te tuahau koe me he maunga teitei. Aim for the highest cloud, and if you miss it, you will hit a lofty mountain. Kia ora.